Hello, welcome to this cheeky little bonus episode that's coming out to you in the week of the Traitors final, which probably gives you a good hint on what we're going to talk about. Because I have been desperate to talk about the Traitors for some time, and this series has been so twisty and turny, and there's so much I want to talk about, and so much about this particular reality show that I want to talk about, and its insane fan base, and the fact that it's also international and fan base has a fan base in so many different ways that I just had to be like, Vivian, we need to talk about the Traitors. Which I think is quite interesting because I don't think I've watched it since the first series, and it's like this and Bake Off, they're my reality shows, really. You know this, I'm not a big reality show person, but the Traitors, basically they went, we're going to make a reality show and we're going to theme it like a gothic horror, and I went, great, that sounds right. That was how you got me. I wanted it set in a Scottish castle where people get murdered.
Interesting, because you've mentioned that you don't like certain reality shows because it's like really, like, you get almost like anxiety watching sometimes. Particularly, there are I have to leave and go and do things in the kitchen or make a cup of tea every time.
Because
I was about to say, this is not exactly, I mean, I know it's still campy and it's a game and it's whatever, but, you know, I can see if somebody has that this wouldn't exactly be it's not Bake Off.
Yeah, no, it's not Bake Off. I think particularly, like, because I think it's almost like melodrama, right? It's so ridiculous and the theming makes it even campier and all that kind of stuff. And I also think it, as a show, and I think this is something we need to talk about, the casting of the UK show as opposed to pretty much any of the others is so, like, these are just really normal people in some form or another. It's kind of getting less so because they're kind of wanting to throw in a curveball every so often, but they're still just people. Even this series has been Harriet, who is a Times Sunday bestseller of criminal fiction, and she's an ex-barrister, so you kind of have to be like, okay, yeah, she knows what she's doing a bit, but she's still, you know, she's not famous, and they're not, you know, they're not your kind of traditional, shall I say, reality TV people, I guess. I personally have enjoyed the casting on this one more than on other ones. That's not to disparage the casting on other ones. They know their audience, they know what they're going for, and that's fine. But this is clearly targeted at people more like me, I guess, who want a slightly different show. And also, the drama. So much drama in it. It's crazy. But I think as well, because there's not that much at stake in the same way, like it doesn't have the biggest prize fund on it, and they have to earn the prize fund, so you might not even have a big prize fund at the end because you have to literally earn it. And this year they don't have that big a prize fund and it's quite interesting, they've chosen to stay in the game with like protective things over raising money, which I think is quite interesting, that the game is more important than the money, which again, it's just interesting. So but I'm getting too far ahead of myself. You told me you watched the American one, which I've not watched at all.
So this is the first season that I am watching in general of any of them. And I'm watching the American one because I don't have a TV license to watch any of the UK ones, so I'd have to steal anyway. So, and by steal, I mean conveniently find online in...
It's fine, we're not promoting anything. It's fine.
So I've been doing the American one because I also listen to a lot of reality TV show recap podcasts, and most of them are based in America, so they're watching the American ones. And also the American one, well, there is an American normal one. They did the first season of just normal people. And I say that because I think similar to, I don't know the casting, I haven't looked at it at all, but I was listening to a podcast, and there's somebody with a very, very popular podcast for reality television, and he was almost cast on the normal person Traitors. So I don't know how quote unquote normal, and like you say, you've got like some best-selling author on a normal person one where it's like, I don't know.
And it's interesting because that's the first time that's happened, and also it, like, everybody else is she's the only
Yeah,
one
I
like
don't know
that.
if he
You know
would
what
have,
I mean?
because he's kind of a reality TV show pundit, if that's why
Yeah.
they were thinking that he would be a fun throw-in, because he kind of knows the game. But again, I didn't see the cast, didn't watch it, so I can't really speak to that. But the celebrity, quote unquote, it's celebrity.
Yeah.
Traitors for us. They're all like reality TV show people, with very few exceptions. There's a couple Olympians, so they've got Johnny Weir, who's an Olympic ice skater, for people who don't know. And they have a couple of comedians, but like the vast majority of the people are from Survivor or Big Brother or Real Housewives. So they're kind of, there's an old Bachelor, like it was several seasons ago, Bachelor. So he's like, they're not like household names. I think that there was like a season, I wasn't watching it, but there was somebody that my husband watches as a streamer, and the streamer was watching it, and he didn't know half the cast.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not exactly like they're D-listers on a good day.
Because so there was a Celebrity Traitors UK, and it went down a storm because that had Stephen Fry on it.
Yeah, I was about to say, I flipped through the cast, and those were some names.
It was flipping national treasures on there. Celia Imrie.
Yeah.
You know.
So that's why I
Ross.
was like, it's a different realm. When we say the Celebrity Traitors, it is not really.
Yeah. And I wonder whether that's because the Traitors became such a popular thing, and it is hugely popular in the UK. It has like ridiculous viewing figures for live, not not catch up or anything like that, like live viewing figures. And I wonder whether because of that, like a lot of people who probably wouldn't do a celebrity reality show were like, I really want to do this. This is, this actually has some credibility or whatever, but also it looks really good fun. Because I do think, as opposed to many of the other kind of reality TV shows we've seen, it just looks like really good fun. Like, there's a certain amount of, like... I know a lot of people don't like the challenges in the middle, where they have to go and raise the money, and I would love to do those challenges. I want to kayak out into the middle of a burning lake and get money out of a coffin and take it... That sounds crazy! I want to do that! I want to do that so much more than the psychological torture that is this show. You
say, and I think one of my hesitations with this show, for getting around to watching it, was just the premise. I remember somebody trying to explain it. They did the whole, like, they pick these people, and I was like, so they're playing werewolf.
They are playing werewolf, yeah.
Like, they're playing werewolf. I played that game so often in high school. To me, it was like really like you're playing a high school drama game that I played with my theater friends while we were waiting for the show to start. Like, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, but they literally are.
Yeah. And I think it's because some people saw it as really novel, who maybe didn't play werewolf as a teenager in the drama department. So when it was pitched to me as this, like, isn't this a fascinating concept? And I was like, not really.
And Werewolf is by far not the first game to ever do this,
oh, no.
by the way.
No. It's just probably the one that most people would know. But, I mean, it's any of those. There's so many of those kinds of games, especially when you play, like, in a board game household. Like, there are, like, 5,000 different variants of essentially this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I feel like Mastermind is just Trivial Pursuit. So
well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's only so many games in the world.
But I think it was why I was a bit hesitant. And so I decided to watch it because it was my people were talking about it. I knew a lot of the, because I watch a lot of reality TV shows, I knew a good half the cast. I don't really watch Survivor or Big Brother. So those people I don't know anything about. I don't know who they are. So those are kind of new names to me, but like I know the Housewives, and I knew Colton Underwood, who's the Bachelor that they have on, and it's like that kind of thing. So it's like, fuck it, whatever. I'll put it on. They have some Love Island people. They have Maura Higgins, who is from the UK Love Island, so she's on there, which is really funny because she's got this incredibly thick Irish accent, and just thrown in the middle of all these Americans is hysterical. And there's only 2 Love Island people. The other guy is from an American Love Island. And I think there's like a half of him and half of Maura seem to be like, I know we're not on Love Island, but Like, there is quite a lot of flirty banter and like...
They can't quite leave it behind.
Laura, you don't have to make out with someone in this show.
Yeah.
You're fine.
So one of the things I would love to know about the American version is, so in the UK version, like, a language has almost developed about it. Like, certain phrases have made their way into the show that are now sort of synonymous with it, which is quite interesting. And they kind of, you know, somebody would say something in a certain way in the first series and people talked about it in the general populace and stuff. It was all online, particularly the I'm voting for yourself thing. I'm voting for yourself, so and so, which what and it's like literally become like a phrase at the round table that it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to be voting for yourself, and it's like, that's wrong. And it literally came from somebody at, nobody's wrong, everyone talks the right way, the way they want and all that kind of stuff, but it's really interesting, this particular phrase that came from one or two people's way of talking has taken precedent, like, as a thing that you do in the castle in the UK version, because it was so clear online that people were making comments about this slightly odd phrasing. And then also there's things like, I've got heat on me, or like, I've got heat coming into the table, or like, going into the table, and like these sorts of phraseologies and stuff that are like become really synonymous with at least the Traitors UK version. I have watched the New Zealand one, which I didn't vibe with as much, but I think that's just, it didn't quite hit the right notes for me, but they didn't have the same thing. I'll be very interested to see if the Irish one has these phrases in there, because they're coming off the back of the UK one being quite popular. So I don't know, do they have those in the US one? Those kind of little phrases?
This is my first season watching, so if there are, I might not have picked up on it. But it doesn't seem to be that way. But it is one of those things where I think you pick up on that stuff the more you watch a show. Because, like, Love Island has that of, you know, somebody made a phrase once. Maura famously said that she got fanny flutters when seeing certain people. And now that's a thing that, like, literally on the American one, they're talking about it. So, like, it's, I think there are just certain... But if you're just watching the American one for the first time, you might not recognize that they're saying that because of... you know, season 4 of the UK one, somebody said this thing.
I just think it's very interesting that because things like, particularly Love Island and the Traitors and stuff, and Big Brother, all these reality TV shows, because they're a space and a time, and you're in, like, the location and all this sort of stuff, and it's like a language develops for the show. And,
yeah, well, you also you get like this plethora of being able to, and I think the UK is particular for this, which is why it might happen more on UK shows than US ones, is that you get, I mean, the UK is full of just really incredibly regional dialects. And you might not, as just an individual, encounter certain dialects in your life just going about it, but you would if that person shows up on TV. And then suddenly that, it's not maybe necessarily a weird way of phrasing for that person, because that's quite normal for where the specific village in the UK that they are from, that's how they speak. And I have come to pick up on certain things from certain regions, because obviously from being like way outside, I have to like find those things. And I remember talking to Tom, and I was like, oh, I think that person's from like around Newcastle, and he was like, oh, but they don't have like a really Geordie accent. And I was like, yeah, but they're phrases.
Yeah,
like the way they see a lot of northern, particularly like Newcastle, Durham area, use we as a singular pronoun.
Yeah. So
you know, like, oh yeah, we went to the shop today, and they mean them, they, only one person went to the shop. Instead of saying I went to the shop, they say we. And like, that's a phrasing that I found particular to that region. And I mean, there might be other ones as well that do that, but when I was living there, I found that.
I have a feeling that the yourself thing might be a and when I say London, I don't mean like London, I mean like Landon. Like, you know, I think it's like, you know, a sort of East End thing. And again, I may be entirely wrong, people can tell me, but given who it came from in the first series, I think it is, I think that might be the case, that it comes from a sort of a slang kind of conversational style that is very certain in London. It's just very interesting that they got picked up on as that was so unusual. And it does sound weird. When I say it, it sounds weird. Yeah. You know? So like,
I just think that's going to be more typical, I think, in the UK, just because there is that variety of dialect choices, where in the US there's just not. you do have some dialect regionals, but they're way bigger regions and way more general, I think,
And I
alternations.
suppose as well, when you put a selected group of people into a small enclosed space, and they are from all over the country, that they will start to connect those with each other, that their language will influence each other in that kind of way. It is just very interesting that these are reality shows develop their own slang, I guess, their own little dialects of, that's a Traitors dialect word. You know, I kind of love that idea. To be like, I've got heat on me. I'm going into the round table with heat is like, that's something you would only ever say if you're in the Traitors castle.
I do have to say, watching the US one has made me almost not want to watch the other ones, just because the host for the US one is Alan Cumming.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine anybody else doing what he is doing.
See, I just
can't imagine it, because he is so amazingly perfect. He is so over the top. He has costume. He dressed as a coffin. Yeah. Holly, he dressed as a coffin.
The problem is, I have Claudia Winkleman, and she's incredible. Like, because she isn't like Alan Cumming, she's not acting. She's just being a very over-the-top version of Claudia. And Claudia's quite over-the-top anyway. I mean, I'm a big Strictly Come Dancing fan as well, so I'm a big fan of Claudia Winkleman. And I literally, one of the things I found, and it's actually something I've also found watching other versions of Taskmaster, is I don't vibe with it as much because it's not Alex and Greg. And I love Alex and Greg. And watching other versions of the Traitors, I couldn't vibe with it as much because it wasn't Claudia. And it is interesting that I think the host is as much part of the setup, of the scenery, of everything. They are the main character to a greater or lesser extent. You know, they're taking you through this journey. They're your crypt keeper, or, you know, I think, you know,
with Alan Cumming, it kind of weirdly fits because he's also Scottish.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, and it's in a Scottish castle, and he's speaking with this really heavy Scottish accent, and so
which is not his accent.
So but you can kind of live in a world where it's like that's his castle, and he's roped all these people in here, and you can kind of live in this space where,
And that's funny because the thing I love about Claudia is it kind of feels like, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like she is haunting this place, and you know, she doesn't own it. She's just there. And you're now trapped with her. You know, it's like, oh, we're here with you and you're going to torture us. Oh, God. And yet she's kind of brilliant and wearing incredible fashion the entire time. I think Alan Cumming and her have had some similar outfits. Like probably. The one for the one where they went on the walk for the wake, where they were having a funeral, and her outfit with that he mirrored, and it was incredible.
Well, because I know, at least for the US and the UK one, I can't speak for the other ones, but I know that they're filmed in the same location.
Yeah.
And that the production company is exactly the same. And so it's probably that they have the same team, the same stuff. They bring in one group, they film everything, those group leave, they do a quick wipe and clean everything off, and then throw in the next group from America. I think that's absolutely. Kind of how, so I think it's very easy to, I could imagine that actually it would be quite easy to flow between the two, because it would probably match style and flow and structure, because everything would be quite the same.
It's again another issue with the Australian and the New Zealand versions, is they are in a completely different location, and they don't have, I mean, I know the castle they're filming in is a Victorian recreation castle. It is not, there may well be parts of it that are older, but the bit you see and all that kind of stuff is clearly a Victorian recreation, or at least reconstruction. I don't know exactly, but that's the visuals you get from it, which is not a bad thing. It looks great. But in the Australian version, they're in sort of an old ranch, like a very high class looking sort of ranching setup. And in the New Zealand one, it's similar. And that just doesn't give the same vibe. I'm sorry. If you kind of want it to be an old spooky house, not somewhere that could be a nice spa break, you know? And I'm aware they don't have necessarily the same locations available to them. But since the US one flies out to do it in the castle, I am kind of surprised that they decided not to do that, but it may just be they went, that is way too far. That's a long way.
It's a little too far to fly to Scotland from.
Also, the Australian and New Zealand ones seem to do it over a set number of weeks rather than them all being there the whole time. It's quite odd. They seem it's slightly different setup, and I'm sure if it's the one you watch first, it works, but comparing it to the UK one, I just found it didn't quite have the same way of doing things. Also, I have to say, I think it was the Australian one that I watched was quite mean-spirited, in that the people who were there were playing the game in a way that was bitchy. And the UK version, I'm going to be honest, even like your most outrageous UK reality shows, I've never had that feeling from. And that will just be the environment you grow up in, what you're used to. But there's always a slightly good-natured feeling to UK reality shows. I mean, I don't watch Love Island or anything religiously. I've seen bits and pieces of them and obviously talking to you about it. But they never feel like they're being actively mean to each other in quite the same way.
There were, I think about a 3-year span where a lot of the Love Island was quite toxic, but they seem to have recently pulled it back, because it's that strange mix with Love Island where you do want some toxic people because that's what makes it fun, but like they have to be a certain level of toxic, and then you can't have too many of them all at once, because then they all like it's like you also gotta have somebody down to earth that goes, shut up, dude, and then then you're like, yeah.
And I think given that the UK has borne a whole series of Bake Off spin-offs of Sewing Bee and the Pottery Throwdown and this recent knitting one and stuff like that, clearly the UK likes a quite mild-mannered level of reality TV show. And also our other two most popular ones, and they're reality TV shows with celebrities, are Taskmaster, which we've talked about at length, which is very nice, and Strictly Come Dancing. That's what people in the UK like. They like a little bit of drama, a little bit of gossip.
In the US, Strictly Come Dancing is Dancing with the Stars.
Yes.
Same exact thing.
Exactly the same. I think we even had some of the same judges for a while.
Probably.
Not anymore, I don't think. I think they've switched up a bit. But that's the kind of stuff we like. We have loads of reality TV shows, but those are the ones that have lasted because they're just really popular. And Traitors, I think, despite the fact that as a game you'd think it would be quite mean, everyone kind of comes out of it looking really good.
Yeah, I mean, it has the potential to it, and I think that's where we've talked about this before, where I talk about how the kind of where the reality TV really shines and how you know whether or not a reality TV is going to succeed or fail is in the casting. And at least from what I have gathered, Traitors has been, at least for the US and the UK, been quite good with casting. And I think that's what it is like, you've got to have like the right balance of the right kind of people with the right kind of mindset, because you could easily cast this in a way that is horrendous by just getting a certain type-minded people in it.
Yeah. So I think this is why I keep coming back to Harriet. I think it's why she got cast. And I think it's because they knew she wasn't going to be a player who was going to be there going, I need to win. She was going in for the love of the game. And that's a really fun kind of player. To have people who aren't in there just because they want to win, they're there because they want to see what they can do and how they can play it and all that kind of stuff. It's just fun. And this season they also had 2 police officers cast in it. One was a detective chief inspector and one was, I think he was a uniformed police officer. Both were rubbish, I have to say, because police officers are not actually trained in solving crimes.
I have heard a little bit about the detective one and how she really showed how police work.
If nothing else, the Traitors has completely proved that anything about body language or instinct or anything like that is completely bollocks, right? It's complete. You cannot tell. You just can't, right? Because I'm going to be honest, and I know it's part of the edit, but the Traitors are often so obvious. But if people like them, they won't suspect them. That's it. Yeah. That's all it comes down to. And I think we do probably have to talk about the bias that comes into this show. That is something that has been talked a lot about this series, and it came off the back of the UK celebrity version, and that is the fact that the bias against people of colour within the Traitors is really clear, and it is very clearly an issue of racism within the UK, and how people are just not recognising that in themselves, that they're going, oh, you seem, different, or you're acting different, or you're being suspicious, and not necessarily questioning why they think that about that person, when they might give somebody else the benefit of the doubt, particularly if that other person is white. And it is very interesting, because I think it is something that clearly there has been a pattern of. I think pretty much every series, particularly dark-skinned women get voted out, if not first, very, very early on. And that is something that a lot of writers of colour and sort of TV pundits have talked about already, so I don't feel like we need to go massively over it again.
Yeah.
But it is very interesting, and I think it's something that the Traitors particularly has done well in showcasing. This is something we need to have a conversation about as a nation, perhaps. Definitely, the answer is definitely we need to have a conversation about that as a nation.
Yeah, the US one has been having a very similar problem, unsurprisingly. And it's kind of coming out in weird ways as well. So there was, I will kind of get into some specifics here. So we have Ron Funches on, who's the comedian. He's very deadpan. He kind of speaks with a very slow, steady... He's very funny. You should check him out. I love him. But anyway, he's on. And one of the Real Housewives was also on, and she had a very honest to her slip up. But if you don't know her, it would definitely sound shady, where she basically said, I killed Ian. And then when they were talking about who died, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess that means you're a traitor. And so he called it out. He had this evidence, so everyone banished her, and it turned out she was a faithful. And so then they all kind of turned against him. Now, Ron Funches is a black man. And so they've been really holding it against him. They've really been talking about it. And then in a kind of more recent episode, a white guy did a very similar thing, although with way less evidence. And got it wrong. And everyone's like, oh, you win some, you lose some kind of attitude. And
yeah.
And no one's really, no one on the show is really talking about it. Like, Ron hasn't pointed it out, but I'm sure he knows, of like, why is it that this guy is getting persecuted from one problem at the very beginning of the game versus this other person who did that against a black woman and then was wrong. And yeah.
And it's incredibly interesting how it comes out, particularly against women of colour, that people are expecting a certain kind of behaviour or a certain kind of attitude from them, and if that isn't what they get, it's therefore seen as suspicious. And women in general, I have to say that on the show, if women behave in a way that is not your kind of more obvious female traits, I don't really know how to describe it, but particularly it's very noticeable that neurodiverse people, and particularly neurodiverse women, get accused a lot of certain things. And I think that probably autistic people would do badly on it. There have been a few autistic contestants, but pretty much only men, or at least only men that have said that they're autistic on it. But yeah, it's just very interesting to see the way people's biases of, I expect you as this group of people to behave in this way, and therefore I will judge you against that. Plus, I don't inherently trust you in the same way I might trust somebody who looks like me, and particularly from white people. And I don't think that's what people are. I don't think it's conscious. I definitely don't think it's conscious. I mean, it might be for some people, but watching the show and the way it's edited, I do not believe it to be conscious. And that is even more of a problem, that it's not, Yeah,
there's been, so one of the traitors for the US one is a black woman from Real Housewives of Potomac. And I think she is playing it very interesting. I would love to hear a black woman's take on it, because I always feel a bit, obviously, unqualified to...
Yes, obviously we're both talking from the point of view of
to
white people.
But on the show, now granted, on the Real Housewives of Potomac is an all-black cast. And so you are going to act different when you are surrounded by, like, There has been a lot of conversation on that show about colorism. I don't want to pretend that that isn't existing. But obviously, when you throw in white into the equation, it's a little bit different than even a colorist conversation. And she is a darker skin-toned woman, and she was always quite loud in the show. She would always she was very shouty, kind of always putting her opinion in there. And I have not seen that on this show. Now, I don't know if it's because she's a traitor that she's trying to keep more low-key, or if she's also recognizing, I'm around a lot of white people. And that's not how I'm going to be acting in this kind of environment, no matter what the show was or no matter what the situation was. I'm just going to naturally act different around white people. But she has been a lot more like, oh, that's so smart of you to think that way, which is a very like feminine, kind of subservient kind of positioning, which makes people like her and trust her and bring her in, which I find really fascinating, especially in contrast to how she was on her own show.
It's very interesting. There are some incredible articles, both in Teen Vogue and Grazia, as well as a couple of others. I think, I can't remember it off the top of my head. There was one I saw recently as well, and we will link those in the show notes for people who would like to see and read, and I recommend you do read them from the point of view of people of colour on this topic, as it is something that definitely needs to be talked about. But yeah, it's interesting. The biases that people have in general are fascinating. And what was super interesting as compared to the celebrity version, where a lot of the celebrities knew each other in some capacity just by being in the industry, those biases were very easily shown against the people they didn't know so well and that weren't in the same circles, and they came out very quickly, but also how people who were the younger competitors in that one didn't have those contacts and so weren't able to build connections in the same way, and they got banished or murdered quite quickly. Which was, again, just an interesting observation, and I don't necessarily think it's something that needs to be massively critiqued on an individual level, but more of a community level of, like, why did that happen, and what are people talking about, and how is it being talked about. But it's a very interesting game, if nothing else, just the way that people enter it, and how they're thinking, and that police are rubbish at it.
The age thing is really interesting to me, because Johnny Weir is on with Tara, I can never remember her last name, she's also a figure skater, and they do punditry together, like they're constantly together, Johnny Weir and this chick, and they showed up, and people don't know that they always do work together. They didn't know who Johnny was. They didn't know who she was. And so they're basically pretending that they're not that close. So that way they can be separate. And they said it at the very beginning, the very first episode, we're going to pretend that we're not like tied at the hip, which they are. And they were like, oh yeah, we're both figure skaters, so we like know each other. But like, that's kind of the extent of what they're saying. And that nobody in the castle's like debating it. No one's like, don't you guys like constantly do everything together? There's like none of that conversation, and I think it's because they just genuinely don't know, which is crazy, because then when I'm listening to podcasts, people are like, but they have to know, right? Like people have to know this, right? But it's also like, I can imagine, like, my husband wouldn't know that. He wouldn't know who these people were at all. Like, especially the younger people who weren't around when, like, Johnny Weir was actually figure skating. Like, they're not going to know who he is or what he's doing or, like...
Yeah. And I think it's interesting with the UK celebrity traitors that one of the younger people, or I think he was the youngest, was a YouTuber. And so just completely different circles, right? That's a completely different part of the world. And he was amazed that anybody knew who he was. He was particularly amazed that Stephen Fry knew who he was, which was quite sweet. But I think it may be counted against him to a certain extent. I think there's also a conversation, as we talked about before, that he was black. And I don't know which element of that kind of led to people not trusting him more. But also the fact that Stephen Fry did know who he was and did know that he ran a pranks channel. And knew that his YouTube channel was about pulling pranks on people and tricking people. And that was the evidence they brought to accuse him of being a traitor. And it's like, that's quite interesting. That somebody did know one person with quite a lot of sway, let's be fair, because everybody trusts Stephen Fry. And so you kind of see these things, that bias of, oh, well, we trust Stephen Fry because he's Stephen Fry. You know, not because actually he might have got this completely wrong and just be guessing the same as the rest of us. And with the regular people, those normies version of Traitors, you kind of see those big personalities taking the lead, taking the forefront, and being the ones that people trust. And often they are traitors. Because they're the people who the casting are like, you're going to make a great traitor, but we can also see you having this sort of leadership mentality. I can't remember if it was the last series or the series before. There was Paul, who was like this very big, over-the-top personality, and he was great fun. He was like a proper sort of villain, like moustache-twirling villain for the whole thing. It was great. But he got himself caught out because he was a bit too much. But he was very much a leader for quite a lot of the series. Oh, it was series 2. And then this series, you've got Rachel, who she is great. And she's very much sort of put herself in I don't want to say matriarch because it's not quite right, but she's very much taken up this voice of like, I'm a woman in my 40s and I'm, a strong leading personality and I talk about my kids and stuff like that. And it's not quite so obvious, like she's not being super overt about it, but you can kind of tell that she's positioning herself in a slightly certain way of like leading the group, and people completely trust her. And it's very interesting when you see that happen. So I'd be fascinated by it.
This series of the American one has been really interesting to come in on, because I've been hearing all of my podcasters kind of talking about how that was really common for the US one as well. But this time they're like playing it different. Either they're doing it on purpose or the way that they just chose these people are a little bit different. So like I said, that Candace is kind of playing it a little bit more demure than she normally would. She's still very, I don't want to say that like she doesn't have any kind of strong personality. Obviously she does. It's just not quite as in your face as it is on the other ones. But she's still like there. She's still around, but she's not really the one going, hey, have you guys ever thought about, or anything like that. She's kind of going along with people. And the guy from Love Island US is also a traitor. And he's taking a lot of a leadership role in the games and then not really doing it as much when people are talking. He's kind of naturally a quiet guy. And I think part of what made him a really good fuckboy is also what's making him a very good traitor, is that he has this ability to make you think that he's agreeing with you by not saying anything.
Interesting.
Like, because this is that's what fuckboys do, right? Is they sit and they pretend that they're agreeing with you. And so then when you turn around and you go, hey, I thought we like had a thing, and they go, I never said that. You said that. I didn't say that. Like they could play that kind of game. And so he's basically doing that, but like not for fucking people. But like, so he's in the circles and people are talking about their opinions and they're not realizing that he's not actually offering anything because
he's been stronger in the leadership
earlier
in the day.
Yeah, he's super strong and really leads and really helps people. Like there was a bit, I'm sure they do the same, I think they do the same games across the US and the UK with just very tiny variations. So they probably have done this one where you had to trust somebody and you got into a cage.
Oh yeah.
And so then the other person outside of the cage had to do a task, and if they did it in time, then you got freed. And he was paired up with a faithful, and he released her like real fast. And it was because he's like, I want to win. That's what I do. Like, I'm competing. And then people aren't going to suspect him because he's not playing those games like a traitor would play them, right?
Yeah.
Which has been it's been really fascinating to like hear people's commentaries on like how it's quote unquote normally done versus how like the traitors in this one are actually playing it. And then obviously, everybody who's in the game has seen it and seen the show, and they're like, well, a traitor leads people, so you're a traitor because you're leading people, and they're never right.
And because the thing is, the traitors also watch the show, right? So they're not going to play the same game as the traitors before them. Like, they're going to, each time it's going to be completely different. So I always find it interesting with like, well, that was what a traitor would do. And you're like, you don't know what a traitor
Yeah.
would do, because they're going to play it completely different every single time. And I mean, that's something that when you have played a lot of werewolf in your life, the werewolves never play the game the same way, ever, because they're different people every single time. And I think that's always quite interesting when people go, but a traitor would do that. They would say that. And you're like, would they? Or would they just be the same as everybody else? Because the werewolf will eat you. You know?
Can I conclude this bonus episode with my own horror story of playing werewolf?
Oh my god, absolutely.
So I was in theater in high school. And I was part of the International Baccalaureate program. So it was a very tiny group of people, and we were kind of always together for the whole 4 years of high school. So we got to know each other really well. We're always playing werewolf together. Like, you're always playing with the same people, which also means that you tend to really pick up on aspects of people because you know them inherently. Well, it was pretty much a constant for like a whole year, pretty much. Whenever we played werewolf, I always died first. I was always killed off first every single time. It became a joke of like, Vivian dies first all the time. Well, then people started picking up on the fact that I die first. So they started keeping me around, which meant that people then suspected me when I wasn't killed first. So then I was murdered first by the villagers. So the villagers would kill me either in round 1 or 2 if I wasn't murdered by the werewolves. And then I graduated. So I never really got to play a full round of werewolf.
Oh my god!
So that's my trauma.
Oh, wow! And so you don't want to play the traitors. Reasonable.
No,
Very
no. Knowing my luck, what other person on that would be somebody I went to fucking high school with, and they'd be like, Vivian always dies first.
Oh, that's so funny. It has happened where people have been cast, and then like this series, two people were cast. They didn't know, they not seen each other for 15 years, and they get to the castle and they're like, oh my god, nobody knew. I mean, the producers might have known, but that'd be a hell of a push. I mean,
the UK is small.
Yes, it's true. You're going to get people who are like, oh, hello, person.
It's going to happen at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. There's only so many people here. No, I've really enjoyed this. I'm glad we got to talk about the Traitors, because I do love it, and I'm very excited for the final this week and how that's going to go, because I think the Traitors I will be very happy if the Traitors team this year wins, because they have been wonderful. They have been so good, and I think it's also the first time I've ever seen a Traitors team go, we're going to stick together and we're going to do it, and we're going to get to the end.
Ours is doing that. And
yeah. They
also, I think you guys had this too, where there was a traitor picked at the beginning that was like a secret traitor.
Yes.
And no one knew. Yeah. Ours was Donna Kelsey, Travis Kelsey's mother.
Interesting.
Yep. And there was everyone at the beginning were talking about how they were scared to go after her because it might make the Swifties mad.
Yeah, don't kill Taylor Swift's mother-in-law.
Like, you can't piss off the Swifties.
We know about the Swifties here. No, it's been really interesting. The secret traitor, interestingly, 2 of the traitors, the 2 who have now made it into the final, they made the promise to each other, and they never made it to either the secret traitor or the other one, because it was the 2 of them who got into the tower first, and they didn't then reiterate it to anybody else. And those 2 have stuck together. They haven't recruited, they haven't done anything, and they have genuinely, and this is another one that my absolute favourite phrase from the Traitors, they've played a blinder, you know. They've played an absolute blinder. They've done very, very well. And Stephen, all your outfits are wonderful. I wish I had your wardrobe. They're so good. And he's wonderful, and Rachel's great. They're so great. I've never watched a series where you've genuinely gone, I really want the Traitors to win. You know? You always kind of want the faithful to win in the end, but this time round, they've captured the hearts of the nation. They really have. It's great. So, yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it. Yeah, we will link some articles below for people to get more information about what we've been talking about, as well as it's probably some just fun articles about the Traitors and how it works. And thank you so much for listening, and Vivian for recording this little bonus episode with me. I've enjoyed it a great deal.
Ooh.
If you aren't following our Patreon, there's lots of bonus episodes there, lots of amazing, interesting bonus content.
We did another bracket challenge. I haven't decided whether I'm going to make that public yet, so go and listen to it.
It was Vivian's turn, and it was great fun, and watching her squirm was wonderful. So, yeah, get over onto our Patreon, and we will be back with a full series in May.
Yeah.
Not too long now. So, goodbye. Don't get murdered in your beds. And hope that Claudia Winkleman doesn't show up to haunt you. Bye-bye.
Bye.